Yeah,
along
so
with
the ability to address the four skills, along with vocabulary
yes,
and pronunciation and grammar, which are the
hmm
three sort of language elements,
yes,
and how we can teach all of those things in some kind of an integrated fashion. And that's not that we wouldn't on occasion teach them in an isolated fashion, but I think we need to remember that it's really important when we're teaching reading, for example, to also talk about listening, or to, when we're talking about listening, to also talk about pronunciation, or
hmm
when we're talking about reading again, to look at the grammar that's underlying the reading passage that we're having the students. And so that's a challenge for teachers to learn how to do that. Um, and yeah, the integration of skills, I think, is really important in most modern methodology. So
hmm
that would be another really important element of a methods class, and getting the students when they're doing lesson planning to figure out how can I integrate. And it's not that you need to integrate all of these all at once, but you know,
exactly.
if I'm, if it's a reading lesson, what other skills might I address in the reading lesson?
hmm
And if it's a listening lesson, what other skills could I address in the listening lesson? Um, and we all know that, certain skills get sort of forgotten, or, you know, pronunciation is one that teachers say, well, I'd love to teach pronunciation, but I just don't have enough time because I'm too busy teaching vocabulary and grammar. And, so figuring out maybe just a 3-minute thing that I can add in when I'm talking about grammar and I'm talking about past tense endings. Can I talk about pronunciation of the past tense endings? That's really important. Um, and I think, again, that's where experience comes in, but when we're talking about novice teachers, that's what they lack. So getting them
Yes.
to realize that, how can I do this? That's very important.
How to actually put all of them together or a couple of them.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
they just believe that there's certain skills that are really important. And this is something that actually comes to my mind right now. One of the part of my experience as a teacher in a kindergarten. Something like that actually happened because I remember that the principal of a school was actually telling us that, okay, it's time. I mean, I don't want all the teachers to teach how to read. I just want the teachers to teach speaking. That's it. That's all I want. So it was quite
Hmm.
frustrating. I mean, because you
Yeah, of
cannot actually
course.
manage to teach only one skill, but leaving the other ones behind. I mean, there are more than one skill that you always teach combined.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really telling and important for us to realize, that, you know, learners need all of these skills, and teachers need to address all of these skills, but not all at once. And, I think teachers can very, very often become overwhelmed by the task of addressing all of these skills if they don't plan for it in advance, and if they don't think about how can I integrate the skills.
Definitely.
So that was sort of our next topic. Um, my next one would be, and this is very important, the impact of the learner's first language on
Yes,
what it is we do in the classroom. And this is something that is difficult to do in the classroom where we have learners who all speak the same first language, but it's even more difficult to do when we've got learners from multiple language backgrounds in the classroom. And because I'm a pronunciation specialist, that's something that I think about a lot. But it's also true for grammar, it's true for vocabulary, it's true for just about all of the skills that we teach, and understanding why learners are having difficulties why they're not able to pronounce a particular sound, or why the grammatical structures that they're producing are not target-like, because they come from a language where the syntax is completely different.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's a really important thing to let them understand, and maybe that could be a possible project in the methods class to look at a particular language group and to talk about why um, vocabulary is difficult for learners from that background, or why grammar is difficult for learners from that background, or why pronunciation is difficult for learners from that background. I think that's something I've never actually done, but I think it could be a very useful project in the methods class. Um,
Definitely.
yeah. Um, there's a wonderful, wonderful book from Oxford University Press. It's called Learner English by Swan and Smith. And it doesn't cover all languages, but it covers a lot of the common language groups that we have in our classroom. And it talks about the challenges that learners from a Thai language background, or from a French
Exactly.
language background, or a German language
Mandarin.
background, Mandarin, yeah. And I think that can be very, very eye-opening for teachers. So that's one of the books that I recommend a lot for my teachers. And I'm amazed that teachers don't know about that book in conferences when I mention it. But I think that's something that should be on every teacher's bookshelf. So I'll put out a little PR for that book.
Note.
Little note. Yeah. Okay. Um, next one might be an awareness of the various Englishes that exist today. We're talking about global English, and the fact that we no longer are prescribing in our classroom that learners acquire RP English, or standard American English,
Exactly.
or Australian English, but that we need to realize that when we're teaching in certain environments, Filipino English might be the target that we're aiming for. So I think that we're much, much more aware today of the variations, and how important it is for our learners to be able to understand and have a sort of more intimate knowledge of the different Englishes that exist. And if we're teaching in a particular environment that's not a L1 environment, what is the English that we're aiming to teach our learners? I'll tell you a little story why this is important to me. When I started teaching, and remember I told you that I went to Germany because I learned that they were looking for English language resource teachers, native speaker resource teachers back in those days. That was still an okay thing to to talk about. Um, when I arrived at this small North German school,
Yeah.
the teachers were kind of horrified. It's like, oh my God, she speaks really bad English. It's not British English.
Oh,
No, I don't speak British English. You guys just got somebody from California. I speak California English, and there's no way that I'm going to transform myself overnight into a British English speaker.
exactly.
And then the second resource teacher arrived, and the second resource teacher was from the Bronx.
Ooh.
Oh my God, this is horrible English, according to the German teachers.
Of course.
No, we can't have this guy in the classroom. And then the third resource teacher, there were three of us. Third research source teacher appeared, and she was British English speaker. Oh, great, we've got a British English speaker. But she was from Manchester. And they said, oh my God, her vowels are all wrong. So in the end, they decided that I was the best of the three, or the worst of the three. The best of the three, what do you say there? The evils, right? And it was hilarious because, of course, the students were thrilled that they had an American English, well, two American English speakers. Um, and I've learned, that this is something that we need to be very aware of today. And I think the more we can have people from different backgrounds, different parts of the world that are considered to be native English speakers or at least multilingual speakers of English, I think that's very, very important. So
Yeah. And what's your point of view now that we're talking about this? What's your point of view about this nativism versus non-nativism? Because right now
yeah,
it's pretty much of a war, let's say, because
it's a huge war. Yeah,
yes, right now it's like, oh no, I'm not a native speaker, so that means you can't teach. You cannot be a
yeah,
good teacher. So what are
yeah.
your thoughts about that?
Well, my thoughts are, of course, that anybody can be a good English teacher, and in many cases, I think that non-native speakers of English, quote unquote, non-native speakers of English, multilingual speakers of English, let's call them, can
Yes.
be more effective teachers than the native speaker teachers because they're so attuned to the needs of the students that they're working with. I have a webinar that I did for TESOL where I talk about the fact that non-native speaker teachers may be better teachers than native speaker teachers, especially in the teaching of pronunciation, because they've
Mhm.
overcome so many hurdles and they can tell the students how to do it. Whereas the native speaker teacher may be totally clueless as to, why these learners are stumbling with certain sounds and having difficulties. So
Mhm.
I'm a strong advocate of the fact that anybody can be an effective English language teacher. But of course, they need to have fluency, they need to have awareness, all the things that we're talking about here, they need to have,
Mhm.
you know, all of that is important.
It needs to be a really well prepared teacher. I mean,
Yeah,
it has to be a
yeah,
teacher prepared, studied, basically. That's what a teacher needs.
yeah. That's all it is.
Yeah,
I mean, as long as they've got adequate preparation and motivation to be the best teacher they can in the classroom, because that's important
exactly.
too. Need to be caring and nurturing and all of those things. But that
Yes,
has nothing to do with their native or non-native speaker status. That's a whole different ball of wax, as we say, right?
exactly.
Yeah. Um, what was next on my list? Let's see. Um, yeah,
Diverse backgrounds.
diverse backgrounds. So diverse backgrounds, diverse learning styles. Um, and we're now very aware of the fact that we have neurodiverse learners in our classroom. How do we
Yes.
address their needs? That's I mentioned that the publisher had particular chapters that they thought we should include in our latest methodology volumes, and that's one of the chapters that they asked us to include was the one on neurodiverse learners. So I think that awareness of learning styles um, and learning styles to some degree also often correlate with the language background. So we've got the, very silent, studious, you know, students from certain language backgrounds who are afraid to open their mouths and make a mistake because of the methodologies that they've studied under. And then we've got those learners who just shout out whatever they want
Yeah.
and maybe not in a target-like fashion, but they're very enthusiastic. And when we're teaching multilingual groups, we may have all of those types of learners. How do we deal with that? How do we get the quieter students to also participate? And a lot of that has to do with groupings, doing more group work, making sure that they feel comfortable, maybe assigning them the task of the quieter students, the task of reporting back what was happening in the group. These are simple things that we can train our teachers to do, um, but I think that's something that's very important.
Mm, yes. Neurodiversity. That's a pretty much of the topic, the trend lately, and I've seen it a lot on LinkedIn, m
Mm,
talking a lot of diverse, neurodivergent students and all that, which it's
mm,
good because that's called inclusion. We always talk about inclusion,
yeah,
and it needs to be actually addressed not only in the planning but also in the books. And
Yeah.
that is something that might be lacking a little bit in most of the textbooks.
Yeah. I think most textbooks don't address that.
Mm.
And yeah, I think, for years I would, in my methods class at UCLA, I would have group projects. And there would always be one student who said, I don't want to work in a group.
Ooh.
I want to work, so what do you do then? You say, well, fine, you can be a group of one if you don't want, and they're happy to be a group of one. That's all they
Yeah.
really want. They just don't want to have to be, and that's a learning issue. That's a
Mhm.
learning style issue. And I think we have to be more open to that as teachers is okay, if you want to be a group of one, that's fine. The requirements are the same for the group of one as for the group of four. So in other words, if I say, you have to create a lesson plan that contains X, Y, and Z, just because you're a group of one doesn't mean that you're going to do less work because you've chosen to be a group of one, but I'm happy to let you be a group of one.
Exactly.
Capture life's precious moments in stunning details with our professional cameras. Unleash your creativity and preserve memories like never before. Visit us now at frameflowcn.com.
Yeah. So I think that's really, really
Flexibility.
important. Flexibility. Um, the other chapter that the publisher wanted us to include was one on social emotional learning.
Mhm.
And that's a big, big topic in TESOL today and on LinkedIn also.
Yes.
SEL, social emotional learning. And so we have a wonderful chapter on that as well in the new methods text that we just did. Um, I don't think that I was, as a younger teacher, at all attuned to that. And I wasn't attuned to the diversity of learners either. I think those are really important topics for us to bring up in the methods class to discuss how do we deal with this. Um, the pandemic had a huge influence on a lot of our
Yes.
learners. And also what's going on in the world today. We have a lot of trauma infliction on a lot of our learners. I know that TESOL, my home affiliate of the TESOL International Group, has a particular interest section that's specifically aimed at um, victims, trauma victims, and how you deal with them in the classroom.
Mhm.
I'm thinking particularly because I did a lot of work in Afghanistan of those learners who've been transplanted from Afghanistan to the US, to the UK, to other parts of the world, Australia. I think there are quite a few of them in Australia as well. And how do we deal with these in the classroom? Because they're still suffering greatly from the trauma that was inflicted on them. So
Exactly.
that's a topic that I think we need to raise in our methods classes. And um, as a teacher educator, that's something that I think in my earlier years I wasn't at all aware of myself. So that's very important.
There's a lot more awareness right now in that sense, in that
Yeah.
topic. I met actually a couple of colleagues and new teachers who are doing this type of job with refugees
Hmm.
from Ukraine. They've been doing
Ukraine.
this,
Yeah.
yeah. They've been doing this type of job also. Really
Yeah. I
important as
think
well.
Ukraine is another one that has been standing out. And I know one of my former graduate students has been working a lot as an English language specialist with
Hmm.
Ukrainian teachers. So, yeah. But, so many parts of the world are suffering so greatly. And I think we need to be aware of what effect that's had on our learners. Yeah.
Definitely.
Um, yeah. Staying up to date. That's my
Yes,
next topic. Um, Encouraging new teachers to join professional organizations so that they can stay up to date. I think the worst thing that I see sometimes is I'm calling them fossilized teachers. They, you know,
Yes.
exited their MA program 15 years ago or 20 years ago, and they don't think that they need to attend conferences because they know how to teach and they're just not really up to date. And I think that's really an important thing. So encouraging our novice teachers to think you're joining a profession now, and there's so many ways that you can grow and continue to grow through professional organizations. I'm very, very grateful to TESOL, which is my home affiliate, because I've been quite active in TESOL. I was the journal editor for a number of years. I was the college university rep. I've been on the nominating committee. Now I'm very active in the Teachers of Pronunciation Special Interest Group, so I'm one of the coordinators of that. Um, and I've continued to do that. I've also been somewhat active in AAAL and in TESOL as
Mhm.
well, but more with my home affiliate because I feel that that's where my home is. Um, I really want to encourage young teachers to join these organizations and to think about how they can help them continue to grow and to be mentored by other teachers in the field, and then eventually to mentor younger teachers like they are currently.
Definitely. Yeah. And I couldn't agree more with you because one of the biggest problems that we sometimes face as teachers is that some of us have a little bit of an ego, you know? I already know.
Ye-
Why would I just
Yeah,
go and attend a
yeah,
seminar or a conference? I don't need it. Sometimes we
mhm.
got that those egocentristic teachers, the ego comes out.
I think it's
But
very much of an issue, very much
of
of an issue,
course,
Mike.
yes.
Yeah.
And
And
pitifully, that's what happened.
I'm guilty of it too. I'm guilty of it too. I don't, when I go to conferences, I don't go to enough sessions. I stand in the hallway and I talk to my friends because do I need to go to this session? No, I know all about this, but I don't.
Exactly. So when you
So
come
that
to this
ego issue,
career, yes, when you come to this career, and this is something that I'm an advocate for this, because I believe a teacher is is the teacher's profession is just like a doctor's profession. You will never stop learning. You gotta
absolutely.
keep you gotta keep reading every month. Why not? Attend sessions. There's always something new that comes out. Now that with the AI and all this.
Oh my gosh, I'm never going to catch up with that. But yeah, very, very important for us to
Yeah,
do that, to know what's going on and to stay up to date. And there's so many ways that we can do it. And also, think of yourself as somebody who can contribute to the field. You can be a textbook author, you can be a teacher educator, you can
yes.
be, some kind of a mentor. You can join a professional organization and become even the president of that organization or some other, important position within that organization.
Mhm.
That's really a part of our profession that we need to think about. Or we
Definitely.
can start our own podcast.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the service. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, there's no excuses for
No,
anyone to not
no.
do anything. We can do many more things, even now more than before.
Yeah. So you mentioned AI, and my next point was, familiarity with technology, familiarity with how we can employ new technologies in the L2 classroom. And
Mhm.
AI is the huge one that's on everybody's tongue. And,
Yes.
I think there's so much coming out about that. It's quite overwhelming, to be honest. You look at the volumes, every day there's a new volume that you can buy about how you can use AI in the language classroom.
Mhm.
Um, when I first started teaching, the technologies were quite different. It's like, how can you use an audio cassette in the language classroom, or how can you use a video cassette in the language
Yes.
classroom, or even more? an overhead projector. And as I mentioned, my first job at UCLA was as this media coordinator, and that's what I was training teachers how to use an audio cassette effectively in
Wow.
the classroom. But today it's overwhelming, and I think it's very important for teachers to address that and to think about how they can do this effectively.
Yeah.
So that's,
The new technologies, Bluetooth. We got the USB. Back in the days, we used to actually have the floppy disk. Right now, a
oh, I
teacher
remember them well.
carrying carrying the little USB with all the
Hmm.
information here.
Everything you
Beautiful.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I first heard about the internet, a friend said to
Oh,
me, "Oh, we can look it up on the internet." And I said, "What's the internet?" So I go way back.
wow.
Yeah. And, it's hard for older teachers to learn a lot of these technologies because we're not as conversant. We're not digital natives.
Exactly.
Um, just for me,
And that's a
even
new
to
term.
be, yeah, yeah, it is. So those are important. So that was, let's see, that was number 11.
Yes.
And number 12, which is the last one, is an awareness of the rich and nearly endless options available to people in our profession to explore uncharted territories.
Yes.
Um, I'm going to again talk a little bit about the work that I've done here. I taught for 3 summers in a row a TESOL, an intensive TESOL certificate course for they were actually just recently graduated students from an undergraduate program.
Mhm.
Some of them were not even yet graduated, so some of them were still undergrads. And one of the assignments in this TESOL certificate course was to create an artifact. I called it an artifact. And the artifact was, it could be a CV, it could be a website, it could be an application for something like the JET program or the EPIC program, which is the Korean equivalent of the JET program, where you can go to Japan for a year and teach English. Um, Anything that they wanted to do, anything that they wanted to propose, they had to, do this. And my reason for creating this as one of the requirements in this TESOL certificate course was so that they could see what the uncharted possibilities were. Um, and then one of the students came to me and she said, "You're going to give us feedback on this?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to give you feedback on your artifact. That's, the whole purpose for your doing it is so that I can
Exactly.
give you feedback." And she said, "Can I do more than one artifact?" I said, "You can
Oh,
do, certainly." She did 5.
wow.
She she did 5, and then she actually got accepted to the Fulbright English Language Teaching Program, English Language
Mm.
Teaching Assistant Program, like Fulbright ETA, and went to Thailand and was um, asked to work with the ministry. So she actually was working with the ministry to help develop English language curricula. And I went over to Thailand for one of my State Department assignments, and I actually had dinner with her. And then after
Wow.
that, she got accepted to teach in China, and I finally lost touch with her, but she made use of all 5 of those artifacts that I'd asked them to do. And I thought it was one of the more wonderful projects that I'd ever assigned, was to say, look, and of course I gave them on the website, on the class website, there were all sorts of things that they could investigate. So I had links to the Fulbright English Language Teaching Program, or in those days, also the teaching fellow position with State Department, or the JET program or the EPIC program, where there's something in Spain that's similar, where you can go as a native speaker resource teacher and, get funding to do that. So I had spent a lot of my time sort of researching what some potential possibilities were. But I think that's the most wonderful thing about our profession, is that there's so many options that we have, and that means that teachers can, you know, Peace Corps still has opportunities. That's one of my bigger regrets is that when I first graduated from undergrad, Peace Corps
Mhm.
was just coming out, and many of my friends have done Peace Corps experiences. I never did. I think it would have been a wonderful way to grow and learn. So I really encourage teachers to do these kinds of things, and I'm happy to see, when teachers avail themselves of these opportunities.
Yes, I mean, and again, this profession is limitless. There's no limit. I mean,
Right.
you can keep doing so many things, so many uh contributions to society.
And not
Uh,
just at the beginning of your career, but at the end of your career as well. I had a
yeah.
mentor teacher that I'd been using in my practicum who retired from LA adult school teaching. And he said, I'm having a little trouble making ends meet financially, and I'm thinking that maybe I should take on an additional job. Do you have any suggestions for me? And I said, have you thought about being an English teaching fellow? And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. So I said, well, here's what I'm talking about, and here's the application process. And he applied to the fellow position. He got accepted, and he was placed in Kyrgyzstan,
Mhm.
which is a gorgeous country. It's the Switzerland of the stands. Um, Beautiful, mountains every place. And his project was to create football teams and teach American football. He actually ended up writing a book about it, which is called Footballology. And he had a marvelous, marvelous time. And, that was the last thing on his mind, that he thought he was going to be able to go abroad after having taught for probably 30 years in the LA adult school and do something completely different, but using his background and using his pedagogical skills, but also using his interest in American football and bringing it to Kyrgyzstan. So I think those are the kinds of stories that,
Exactly.
you know, yeah.
They really motivate. Yeah. You know, Donna, it's been what a pleasure has been actually talking to you and listening to all what you have shared today. Because and I really hope this reaches as many novice teachers as possible, and we can actually attract more because we need more
Well,
teachers.
I appreciate your invitation, Mike. It was wonderful to talk with you. And I'm always happy to talk about topics like this. So it's a large part of what I've done in my life. And I've,
Yes,
spent so much time working with novice teachers. So happy to sort of address the issue of what a teacher educator can do and what the priorities would be. And there's so many things I didn't mention, but you can only
definitely.
pack so much into one methodology course, and you usually have 10 or 12 weeks to do it. So it's a limited time period. So I hope I
Yes,
touched on the more important aspects.
definitely. And no, Donna, I mean, this is your house. Whenever you would like to come and share a little bit more, please,
I'll let you
welcome.
know, Mike. I'll let you
Yes,
know. Yeah.
there are
But thanks for the invitation.
many people who would like to keep learning because not everybody
Yeah.
actually have access. So this is the little window that can help these novice, new teachers or experienced teachers to, get in touch with new methodologies or get in touch with other uh professionals and learn a little bit more. So you're more than welcome here
Thank
anytime.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna, and well, I'll see you soon then.
Okay. Bye.